Hey, guys, Graham and Chris here with you, coming back out of left field. Crazy week in baseball battle, man. We got Mark Texeira announcing his retirement today, right at the tail end of the week. Only a couple months left in the season. Plus, we got an umpire ejecting a fan, which I'm going to have an opinion on that one. And the Olympics start, and then all of a sudden we hear baseball is going to be in it next year.
Yeah, kind of a lot going on. And on top of all that, all the teams that we thought were going to do really well after the trade deadline are sinking like rocks in a river.
Yeah, because picking baseball teams in the playoffs is such an exact science for us. This has been, I think, one of the most, as we've said from the beginning, one of the craziest seasons that I can remember, at least up for the up and downs. It feels like that we think we see a team that's going to kind of have, I won't say a stranglehold, but really has a confident, strong grab of the division lead, and then it just melts away.
Yep, it's been going on pretty regularly in almost every division, and some of these division races are getting kind of tight at the top.
They are, and
which is pretty interesting.
It is, and I mean probably the division that has the most drama right now will be the American League East, where we see 3 teams within 2.5 games: the Blue Jays, the Orioles, and the Red Sox, and then the Yankees, who they're 4-6 in their last 10, but they had a bit of a streak going for a while here after the All-Star break. Now find out that their starting first baseman is on the way out the door. Now we've seen Rob Refsnyder up from AAA, taking some starts over there at first. Mark Texeira, who has been a model of what a baseball player should be. Even though he played for the Yankees for a good chunk of his career, he never quite had the clout around him that Derek Jeter had, but he had a respect for the game and played the game in the way he's going to leave it better than it was when he came in. And that's how most players are revered if they do that. And it's not easy to do, and not all players do it. Some guys come and go, and they put up historical numbers, but is the game all that great because they were a part of it? A team may be, a fandom may be, but in this game, I think that the entire Major League Baseball system is better because Mark Texeira was in it. He came out today very emotional, which I don't think was any surprise, and basically just said, you know what, I've given you everything I had, but he just knows that his body can't cut it. We've seen him riddled by injury. He's had fractures to his shins, concussion-like symptoms. His knees have really been going out. His wrist, basically from his head, head, shoulders, knees, and toes is pretty much, if you point to one of those areas, you're going to find an area on Mark Texeira's body that's kept him out of a lot of games these past few seasons.
Yeah, and he sat, the game prior to that announcement. He wasn't going to come out and play. He was hurt. He's nursing a shin injury. He's also nursing a cartilage tear in his right knee. He's probably going to need surgery, so he would have been done for a little while anyway. And that's something that's difficult to come back at Mark Texeira's age. And he's not playing well. He's hitting 197. He's got 10 home runs and 27 runs batted in, and his OPS is only 627, and that's not Mark Texeira. He's not playing the way that we expect to see an all-star first baseman play. It looks like probably that position is going to go to a kid named Greg Bird. He had shoulder surgery this year. That's why you're not seeing him take starts in Texeira's place this year. But last year, he played for Texeira quite a bit, and he actually did pretty well. 11 home runs and 157 bats, and his OPS was 871. And he was an injury replacement for Texeira for a lot of games last year. It is sad to see Mark Texeira go. I'm not surprised by it by any means. I think that this is exactly what you expect to see when you see a guy who was his age in 2009 get a long-term deal for just a ridiculous amount of money. 8 years, $180 million. So watching him leave is kind of the end of an era, but not the surprising end of an era.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen his numbers dip considerably. He was a 5 pick in, I believe, 2001. If I remember correctly from what I read, it was the draft where Joe Mauer went first to Minnesota. And we know Joe Mauer's on the back leg of his career as well. He came up with the Rangers, and, man, I mean, he's on a tear. I mean, this year it has been his worst year average-wise in any of the years he played where he had more than 75 at-bats. In 2013, he only had 15 at-bats, and he had a 151 average. So, obviously, we're going to kind of, move that out of the way. But, yeah, this year, I mean, a sub-200 batting average is just not what we're used to seeing from a guy who has 400 home runs. He's a switch hitter, which there are only a handful of guys who do that with names that I'll throw out who are going to be a surefire Hall of Famer and Chipper Jones. Mickey Mantle, another one as well. I mean, I remember watching him play for the Braves, and I was really bummed out when he left. Really liked him. They traded for him from Texas in 2007. He went to the Angels for a half season. And the Yankees picked him up in 2009, and he gets a ring, and I think that's great. To me, that 2009 championship, it's not tainted, but I think you look at the players the Yankees had. It was the one that Rodriguez won, which everyone's like, really? So I don't know if that World Series, which we've talked about, the Yankees sold their soul for that World Series trophy, and they got it. And they are paying for it now to the nth degree with the number of contracts that they're buying, guys that are way beyond their prime, and they're paying an absolutely insane amount of money to. It's a lot for Mark Texeira to walk away. I get it. I mean, he's been in New York since 2009. Started that season with a 292 average. His best average was, I believe it was 306 in 2007. Actually, 308 in 2008. So his prime years were basically from 05 to 08 when he was really at the pinnacle. Even if you throw 09 in there at 292, and from there we just saw really a consistent decline. From the time he hit New York, everything went down. Now, we began to see his average up almost 40 points from the 09 season to the 2010 season. And his power went up, but I think he got so comfortable, and I think is where we see hitters having an issue, is he became so pull-happy in Yankee Stadium that he became more about being a power hitter, and it drastically affected his numbers once he reached the Bronx.
Right, and that 2010 season is a pretty big deal for another reason. That marks the first season in what would become 5 consecutive seasons in which Mark Texeira wouldn't break 123 games played. He hasn't played over 123 games in any of the past 5 seasons. And in 2013, he played 15 games from that broken wrist. So in addition to kind of not being the guy he was, which was really a contact hitter who could put the ball anywhere in the park that he wanted, was really strong the other way, and kind of settling into that role as the power first baseman, which was, the 1990s sort of, 1980s, 1990s sort of first baseman role. In addition to that, we saw injuries start really taking their toll on him and really affecting the number of games that he played. So, like I said, not a surprise. A little sad, but not at all surprising.
No, and and he was never, the best defensive player. For the most part, his fielding percentage was strong. Obviously we've seen his range steadily decrease. You look at a lot of these fielding defensive breakdowns, and to be honest, they don't tell you a whole heck of a lot. The only time you're ever going to look at the fielding percentage and it stands out to you that it's a problem is going to be if you see a .98 something. If he's below .99, and then you've got an issue. And I think really the moment that I recently realized that it was really that time for him, because I had hoped as a fan to see him play another couple of years and be strong. There was a game this week, hot shot towards him, and he misplayed it horribly. Ranges to his left, got turned around, ball goes behind him. I see it on your head, so I think we were watching the same game, and it was not Mark Texeira-like. And I think that's when I began to realize that it was that time. But let me ask you this, Chris, because where I look at the game obviously more so through an umpire perspective when I watch. I'm kind of watching the intricacies of that and the way rules are being applied. I tend to watch more of what pitchers are throwing. As someone who's a hitter and who played first base for the majority of your career, and you have a deeper appreciation and knowledge of the history than I do, although I love the history of the game. It's a storied game. I think the most storied sport in the world. Is Mark Texeira going to be a Hall of Famer? Should he be a Hall of Famer? I grant you that he should be in the conversation, but does he deserve to have a plaque hung up in Cooperstown?
Is Mark Texeira even close to being a unanimous first ballot Hall of Famer? Absolutely not. His numbers are good. They're not Hall of Fame numbers. And see, this is the same point that I make about other guys who people say should be Hall of Famers because of one huge statistic that they have, because their numbers are good, and a 300 batting average is good.
And to kind of quantify with what you're going at, I probably should have given you this first. As of today, career average of 269, career OPS of 872, slugging 511, 404 dingers though. 400 home runs is a pretty big number to hit. He's driven in over actually closer to 1,300 runs, 400 doubles, 1,836 hits. So he's not going to 2,000 hit mark. That to me might kind of be that moment where it's like, okay, you could hit the ball really, really far, but if you weren't hitting it really, really far, what else was happening?
Right.
But then again, if you look at it in the same, almost half of his hits were extra base hits. 404 homers, 18 triples, 400 doubles out of 1,836 hits. So the numbers look good. I just don't know, like you said, if it's enough to push him into that real hallowed category.
I don't think a 269 batting average puts anybody in the Hall of Fame. I don't think that an OPS really less than – an OPS less than 1 isn't a great career number. I'd like to see it up closer to the 990 mark for him.
And what surprises me is a guy with 903 career walks has an on-base of just 361. So his on-base is not even 100 points higher than his batting average. Right.
And, if you want to answer that question, you got to look at how many times he strikes out. And what he's doing with the ball when he's not hitting it over the fence. And the answer to that is that, at one time in his career, it was extra base hits, doubles, triples, and that's great. But as he got older and as he kind of settled into that power hitter role, he fell into the same trap that a lot of power hitters fall into, and that's if he wasn't hitting the ball over the wall, then he was striking out 1,412 times. If he wasn't hitting the ball over the wall, he was hitting it at somebody. He was missing the gaps. He was missing the holes in the infield, and that's what kept him off the base paths.
And what we're looking at really, as we kind of start to compare, is, I mean, maybe roughly 400 times fewer, but he hit safely 1,836 times, and he struck out 1,412 times. So, I mean, when the gap between strikeouts and hits is smaller than the gap between strikeouts and walks, I think that's really where you begin to see that, and oddly enough, and this is clearly going to make a play into the number of games he played. The highest strikeout number he had was 128 in his fourth year. But his lowest was 83 in 2012, and he played 123 games. Out of the games, we're looking at over 150, so practically an entire season. His 2008 season was his best at 93 strikeouts, 97 walks. So actually, I mean, his ratio there was just a little bit better than 1-to-1, and I think that's where we begin to see that the ratio drastically begins to change. We go into New York, his first year, 114 Ks, 81 walks. Next year, 122 Ks, 93 walks. This year, he's at 76 strikeouts, only 32 base on balls.
Yeah, and that number just keeps getting smaller every year. Or the ratio keeps getting wider, the gap keeps getting wider. And it's not the kind of career numbers that you're going to see from a guy who's going to be first, second, third ballot Hall of Famer. Do I think he'll get votes? Sure. Of course he will. He's Mark Texeira, right? Do I think he'll get close a few times before he ever makes it if he does? Yeah. I mean, if a guy like Jeff Bagwell hasn't made it yet, then how can we really say that Mark Texeira is going to be a first ballot guy?
I think the one thing that we can safely say is that, like I said coming in, is that Mark Texeira left the game better than he found it and was always kind of one of the good guys of the game.
Right. Class act. Absolutely.
But, there really is one city in particular that comes to mind where you aren't always so classy. And I'm not talking about San Diego. I'm talking about the city that booed Santa Claus. And that would be Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So, Chris, since this is going to kind of be my thunder moment of the show, why don't you tell everyone who has maybe not been paying attention what the heck actually happened when Philadelphia played, of all teams, your Giants?
Yeah, well, I mean, I watched this, right? I watched it happen. In fact, I remember messaging you as soon as it happened.
About it.
Yeah. So Giants are playing the Phillies, and Bob Davidson is behind the dish, and it was sort of late in the game, and you kind of see Bob look over at the stands and kind of shake his head a couple of times, and then something happens, and he looks back over at the stands, and he walks over, and he points at a guy, and he hooks him. Now, this wasn't a player that he hooked. No, this was a fan that he ejected. A paying customer was ejected from the Philadelphia Phillies game for making what can only be construed as a homophobic slur against Bob himself, and it's just it really sort of kind of angered some people that he ejected a fan.
It did. What surprised me is with what this guy said is that Bob Davidson actually meant that he didn't feel that it was homophobic in nature, which I guess he didn't actually use any type of derogatory name. But one of the quotes that I saw was, and I don't have the exact quote up in front of me, that there surprisingly weren't a ton of news outlets that actually printed the statement. As we discussed, I believe in week 2, a pool reporter actually did request to talk with Bob Davidson. Dale Scott is his crew chief, and they did speak to the media. Dale Scott actually is an openly gay umpire in the major leagues, a good umpire as well. And Bob Davidson is known to have a short fuse. But what Bob said in his remarks to the media in the ejection report is that the fan said basically, I have a bar on 69th Street. Why don't you come over and suck? Which I think we all, who are probably over the age of 15, can get a pretty good idea of what he's talking about. I don't have a single problem with Bob Davidson ejecting that fan. When you first told me, I kind of groaned because I've watched Bob Davidson. He is, some call it old school, some call it volatile. I think he's a mixture of both. His fuse, like I said, is very, very short. But on something like that, if I was there with my girlfriend or a friend's kids, my nieces, my nephew, whatever it may be, I don't want to hear those things. Because you have to guess that the guy was that intoxicated, there were probably some other 4-letter words coming out that didn't have to do with homosexuality, but you don't want to have kids hear. So I thought the funniest part of the entire statement was when Bob Davidson said, all the fans started cheering me, which was kind of weird because I never get cheered when I'm here. Yeah, you may not recall. There's a great YouTube video, and I believe it actually led to a suspension of Bob Davidson where he gets nose to nose with Charlie Manuel, and Charlie Manuel, as old as he is, looks like he would knock both you and me in the teeth and put us on our butt. And they go back and forth, and there's a couple of no bleep you, no bleep. It was just basically all that back and forth, and they'll be suspended Bob Davidson for improperly handling the situation. So he's had his own share of issues in Philadelphia, but I applaud him for doing it. And I think if you want to give criticism out to somebody, give it to the ushers in Philadelphia for not taking care of that issue before it got that far out of hand, when people were saying they could hear him up in the press box.
Yeah. I have no problem with this ejection at all. In fact, as a person who loves to go to baseball games and a person who loves the idea of getting kids out to the ballpark, getting them to love baseball, which is something that I think has really kind of slowed down in the last decade or two. I think that having this sort of presence at the ballpark is just not what any of us want. And it's, in my opinion, a little unfortunate that an umpire had to turn around and hook this guy when I think that security probably should have had a handle on this before it ever got to that point. I think that when you hear something like that as an employee of the team, as an employee of the ballpark, you need to immediately act to protect the younger children in the crowd who definitely don't need to hear that.
And it's not the first time that Bob Davidson has ejected a fan. He ejected fans in Miller Park in Milwaukee for making homophobic comments to Yadier Molina of the St. Louis Cardinals. That is one of only 2 times that I can remember a fan altercation or issue with an umpire. The other was in Toronto when Brett Laurie went absolutely ballistic, slammed his helmet into the ground after a called strike 3 into Bill Miller. And when the game ended, a fan actually threw a cup of beer was sitting behind the dugout, threw a cup of beer at Bill Miller and hit him. They knew who it was. I believe the fan was arrested, is banned from coming to any games but yeah, this was a good thing, for them to do. So I applaud Bob Davidson for it. Guys, we are out of left field. Graham and Chris here. You can follow us on Twitter at OOLeftField. Shoot us an email if you have any questions about the show, questions for us, or even some ideas for topics that you want to hear. Our email is ooleftfield@gmail.com. Also, hey, find us on Facebook. Just search Out of Left Field. You'll find us on there. And now we were fortunate enough this week to have J.W. Gravely on with us from 27 Out Sports talking about trades. And you can find that on our Facebook, Twitter page. Also, you can follow JW at JW Gravely. That's at JWGRAVLEY. And unfortunately for me, he agreed with you on basically everything that I was fighting for. So I now find out that there are two people in this world that are wrong.
Oh, it's nice that we come in groups and
yes.
have the benefit of experience and.
Hey, I'm just saying, two's right. Company, three's a crowd. That's all. But one of the trades that we talked about was obviously the Marlins and the Padres. And we're not going to get into trades right now, guys, although hopefully by the time the waiver deadline comes through, everything will be settled and we'll know what we have going on. The odd thing here, we discussed Colin Ray being sent back to San Diego because of some medical issues that came up, and I believe it was today, Chris, that Colin Ray looked to have Tommy John surgery on that elbow. Well, now it's come out through Buster Olney, the ESPN senior baseball writer, that Drew Pomeranz may be experiencing some medical issues that Boston has discovered and thinks that San Diego was not forthright with them. So now all of a sudden we thought, okay, maybe this is a one-time oopsie. Now two players from the same team in the same season. Are the Padres trying to just scam the rest of the league? Chris, what the hell is going on here? And what does Major League Baseball do to, A, put recourse and punish San Diego and stop it in the future?
Well, what's going on, I think, is that both the team and the players themselves, whether on purpose or you got to think it's on purpose, right? You don't have a guy who's about to have Tommy John surgery or needs Tommy John surgery and just kind of forget that he needs Tommy John surgery. Oops, sorry, didn't remember that. Should have told you that. Not only the team, who has definitely a responsibility to disclose that, but also the player who has a responsibility to disclose it during his physical. I think that there's absolutely a case to say that San Diego hid some of these medical issues. I think that this investigation by Major League Baseball is going to probably end a career or two. I think it's probably going to uncover that someone in the Padres organization was ordered to do this, because this isn't something that happens, like I said, by accident. Let me
ask you this, because what you just said really struck me and surprised me. So do you think that the Padres general manager was aware of these medical issues, or did team medical personnel or assistant GMs, did they try and keep this quiet from him when the trade was being made? I have a hard time thinking if the GM is supposed to have his thumb on the pulse of that team from a front office standpoint, that he has no clue that there are issues with players, because according to the reports that I have seen, and Buster Olney reported this as well, that Colin Ray has ongoing elbow troubles dating back to his time with the Padres, I think even going into last year. And apparently the Marlins, they had no idea of this. So they weren't aware of it, prior to the trade, during this part of the season. I mean, it seems like it's coming to, completely as a shock to them, which makes me wonder if maybe there wasn't a physical that was required for these two trades.
Right. And that's possible. But at some point, some sort of medical disclosure had to happen. Whether it was a physical with the player or it was incumbent on the team to disclose any medical issues that the player may have. That's going to happen in every trade. Might not be a physical. I assume physical because that's what normally happens. If the guys had a player physical recently, they may not have needed to get one for the trade. But yes, I think that the Padres general manager has to know that these guys are hurt. Does that mean he was malicious in his intent? Not necessarily. However, someone somewhere made the decision to trade these two guys knowing that they were going to have medical issues or were having medical issues. Now, I'm not going to tell you that the Padres general manager knew that Colin Ray needed Tommy John surgery, but he knew he had an elbow. He knew he had an elbow injury because Colin Ray was on the disabled list, and he knew that Drew Pomeranz was having some sort of repetitive use injury because Drew Pomeranz has had issues with it all season.
And the quote from Buster is that Boston, quote, became aware of medical information with Pomeranz that they believe was not properly disclosed in trade talks, close quote. So, and I'm with you. I have a very hard time thinking that GM is unaware of injuries to players, although granted, we did discuss that Matt Harvey had been having this thoracic outlet syndrome, signs and and symptoms, and he had not disclosed anything to team personnel. But if this does come back that San Diego appears to have maliciously or at least purposefully misled two Major League teams, what does Major League Baseball do? Do we see them with a $1 million fine, a multi-million-dollar fine, loss of draft picks? I mean, what can be done to prevent this?
Well, there's not a lot of precedent here, right? I can't think of a time ever that I've heard an accusation like this against a team specifically saying, from another team saying, you lied to me about their health. So where's the precedent? How do we look back and say, well, this is what happened here, and this might be what happens? Are we going to see trade restrictions in the future? Are we going to see mandatory third-party physicals from anybody who is involved in a trade with the Padres? Are we going to see multi-million-dollar fines? Are we going to see the Padres possibly lose draft picks? Yeah, all of those things are possible, and I think several of those things will happen.
So, but you don't think? Let me rephrase. Do you think Major League Baseball will take it to the next level? And if they do something like third-party physicals, that it will end up being league-wide? Because if one team has done it, it's likely other teams have either thought about it or may try it in the future because, hey, we're not being looked at or thought about right now, so let's see if we can slide one in there. So if they do it for one, do they just blanket it and do it for everybody?
Well, here's my question. Why is that not already a thing? We're in a time when baseball players are making hundreds of millions of dollars. Some baseball players are making almost $250 billion.
Giancarlo Stanton has a $320 million fully guaranteed contract. We are looking at Bryce Harper nearing a $500 million when he becomes a free agent.
So how are we not in a place when Major League Baseball is requiring impartial third-party physicals every time a player moves from one team to another? In fact, how are we not in a place where Major League Baseball is requiring impartial third-party physicals every single year for every single player before their money is guaranteed?
You know, I'll be honest, to that point, I had never considered that. So are you saying that while they may have a contract that they have to get a physical every year to see if they're healthy to continue, and if not, they give money back? Or are you just saying before they sign that full contract, there needs to be a full physical top to bottom, blood the whole life to make sure, hey, we're going to give you this money, but you damn sure better be fully healthy and garner as much as we're about to pay you?
I'm saying that if you're going to offer Bryce Harper $500 million to play baseball for the next 10 years, then at least after the first 5, every year should be an option year based on his physical.
Wow. I don't.
How else do you justify paying someone $500 million? Now, okay, so I can see where you're about to go with this. So let's look at Mark Texeira.
Well, my bigger issue is that the guys that are getting these huge contracts, the problem is teams are paying them when they're 29 and 30 years old. That's the problem. If you want to pay Bryce Harper right now where he's 25, 26, that's fine because you're paying him at the tail end of his contract. And you know what? At that point, that's kind of like what we see in the NBA. That's kind of your grandfather. Hey, thanks for all you did. You get a nice paycheck the last couple, and then either you're going to sign for a heck of a lot less or you have a nice day, there's the door. But, I mean, something like where
But even Bryce Harper's going to be 36 years old. In the last year of that contract, he's going to make $50 million. If you don't want to know that a 36-year-old baseball player is healthy before you pay him $50 million, something's wrong. You're not thinking right.
No, I get it, and I'm not saying it's a bad idea. My issue is I don't think there's any way in hell that the Players Association allows that to be collectively bargained to where, hey, we get you have guaranteed contracts, but if you come up unhealthy, then that's for you.
No. This is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that now any player's contract who has a guaranteed contract should have to take a physical and that depends, their paycheck depends on that. Absolutely not. I'm saying that teams who are in a place where they're considering paying $500 million to a player should require that in the late years of that player's career, he should be healthy before his contract can be considered guaranteed money. Mark Texeira got a huge what was in 2009 considered a huge contract at $180 million, right? 8 years, $180 million. He's now limping literally into the tail end of that contract. He's going to make $22 million this year.
Right.
And he's batting 197, and he's hurt every other day.
But my point is, do you really think that the Players Association is going to allow in the collective bargaining agreement, basic verbiage that says, we are going to give you a physical every year after you reach the 5th year of your 10-year deal, and if you come up to be unfit to play or there are health concerns, your team does not have to guarantee you a contract? I
think that in a time and place when baseball is paying the kind of money it's paying to individuals, that telling a player that when he's 35 years old, his health might be a concern, and that concern should transfer over to, hey, you're not going to play because you're hurt or because you have this ongoing injury. And you can even say, okay, it's not based on it's not based on your health. It's based on if you do something like what Matt Harvey did and you hide from us the fact that you are injured and that hurts this team, it's going to hurt your pocketbook.
Well, I get that. I get that. I'm fine with that. But part of your argument, to me, falls on the team. I mean, let's look at what St. Louis did back in 2009, 2000, whatever it was, when the Angels signed Albert Pujols. The Cardinals had an opportunity to re-sign him, and Pujols basically told them that I want a 10-year deal. And they looked at him and said, you know what, it has been awesome to have you here, but we are not going to mortgage our entire club for a decade because we know that there's a good possibility, and I guarantee you they knew what the medical risk, he was probably already developing some of his plantar fasciitis, other issues, and how bad have we seen his numbers decline. So to me, if a team is going to go ahead and offer to pay out money, that's on them. If there's that much of an issue, then get rid of guaranteed contracts.
Absolutely get rid of guaranteed contracts. Absolutely get rid of fully guaranteed contracts. Baseball is one of the only sports in the world that fully guarantees their contracts. It's absolutely ridiculous. You don't see any football player with a fully guaranteed contract ever.
When somebody asks you what is the most valuable sport in the United States, what do you tell them?
Valuable as in what sport makes the most money?
Yes.
Football. Football makes more money than any sport in the world.
And Andrew Luck, the highest paid quarterback, is guaranteed $88 million.
Mm-hmm.
Out of $100 and whatever $1 million or whatever, however much it was.
Right. And guess what? If he goes down and he gets hurt, he gets his guaranteed money and the rest of it goes away.
Yep.
Because the Colts and football, all NFL teams know that if you're going to pay a guy $200 million, like some of these wide receivers are making, some of these quarterbacks are making, you can give him a payday, 70, 80, 90 million, but you don't give him the whole hog up front and say, yeah, no matter what happens to you for the next 6 or 7 years of your life, if you get your neck broken on the field, if you run into the goalpost and snap your femur, if you spend an entire season on the sideline because your ACL tears in training camp, like what happened to a football player on the 49ers this afternoon, no, you're still going to get your money. No.
Well, to be fair,
not.
But there is insurance for those teams to recoup the money that they have to pay. Because if somebody gets hurt, you're going to give them the money they at least garner for that year. But I understand your point of, hey, if you've been hurt, why should we pay you everything else be guaranteed? Well, because you signed a contract understanding that, hey, we're offering you this and this is a violent game, or baseball where, hey, you might tear a hamstring, you might pull this, you might get hit by whatever it may be. So I get your point, and you know what?
You might take a spike in the Achilles tendon. You might get your leg broken in a bad slide.
And I think this is something good that we can look into down the road. I think this topic grew a lot bigger than I think either you or I intended it to when we discussed it, which is great. I love it.
So to go back to the original question, yes, I think that in an era where baseball is paying players $500 million or is getting to a point where they're going to pay a baseball player possibly $500 million, yes, every team should be required to have an impartial third party do physicals for every contract move. Okay,
and I don't think that's a bad idea. So, guys, we will revisit this topic down the road. I think I think definitely, especially with the new CBA coming up, I'm interested to see how that will begin to play out. Again, guys, you can find us on Twitter at OOLeftField. Find us on Facebook as well. We have a page there. Please go like it. Out of Left Field is all you got to search. You'll see our picture up there. Just like that page. You can message us, comment on any of the shows that we've set. All the links to our shows are there, plus some other good stuff. And also, if you ever want to email us, shoot us an email, ooleftfield@gmail.com. Real quick battle before we get into just the craziness that is the second half of the baseball season, which we're obviously not even going to get too deep into because we still have a couple months left. I don't know how much more crazy it's going to get, but something that really surprised me, and you and I discussed, and we may not even have time to get to the last topic here, but if not, we'll say that for next week. The IOC, the International Olympic Committee, this week approved 5 new sports for the Tokyo Olympics in 2020. And they're going to add skateboarding, karate, they'll have surfing, sports climbing,
right,
and baseball and softball. Now, from what I've heard, sports climbing is pretty freaking cool. It's basically like a big rock wall, and guys just kind of Spider-Man it. So from what I've heard,
fly
neat.
Up it. It's if you haven't seen it, go on YouTube and watch some sports climbing. We'll put a link up.
I'll have Chris, if you can do that once we get off here. Find a good link to one of the videos I'm sure you've seen. Throw that up. We'll put it up on our Twitter page at OO Left Field, on our Facebook page Out of Left Field, and you can find it there and watch that, and also see some of our other pictures and things that we've posted. And we talked about this. I don't know how this is going to work. We get the World Baseball Classic starting this next year. And the World Baseball Classic, let's be honest, the U.S. kind of sucks at, because the majority of our good players ain't from around these parts.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
And who excels in the World Baseball Classic, right? The Dominican Republic.
Yep.
Because a lot of our great players, right from there.
That's where they're from. So, to me, this is going to be an even worse version of that, because it's going to end up being in the middle of the baseball season. And unlike something like hockey, where the majority of players go play, you only have 25 guys, maybe a little bit bigger of a roster in an Olympic sport. But what are you going to do for the other 500 whatever plus guys that are just kind of hanging around? What are you going to put guys down in the minor leagues for a while just to kind of keep themselves from getting rusty? It'll be great to have time with their family, but do you get rid of do you postpone the All-Star game that year? Or even better, does Major League Baseball, I know kind of what your feeling is, but does Major League Baseball even want pro ball players playing in the Olympics? To me, I think it would be great to grow the brand, because we have some players from Korea and Japan, obviously, and Ichiro, who's still sitting 2 hits away from 3,000. So, the game is very big in Japan, but does Major League Baseball want to stop the season to allow players to go? Major League Soccer has it where you rent players, and sometimes, hey, your best player might be an international guy, and he's off playing for his country. I don't get how it's going to work.
So my personal opinion would be yes, I would postpone the All-Star break by a month. Basically what it comes down to is the All-Star break gets postponed by a month. The Olympics are only 3 weeks long, right? You're not going to be playing baseball all 3 of those weeks. It's going to be a week-long event, maybe 10 days. No sport in the Olympics lasts the entire Olympic period, because you have to stagger these sports so that they can get played over that 3-week period. I think that if you postpone the All-Star break once every 4 years and allow guys to go play for their country, and allow pro baseball players who have, since I can't remember how long ago, have not had an opportunity to even play baseball on a world stage, you let them go play in the Olympics, which we've seen has worked really, really well for basketball in bringing that sport to other countries. And now,
but granted, basketball is in the off season.
Right, and I'm not talking about it affecting basketball. I'm saying it's working for basketball as far as making basketball popular around the world.
So you're looking more at just the growth aspect right now, not the logistical part of the season at this moment.
I think that something that happens once every 4 years, Major League Baseball can work it into the season somehow. I don't think that that's a difficult thing for Major League Baseball to do on a once every 4 year rotation. I mean, it's not like it's a logistical nightmare. Is it rough? Sure. Are guys who are on that team going to play throughout the All-Star break? Those are going to be the best 25, possibly extended roster size guys in baseball as far as people from the United States go and from all over the world go. Those are going to be the best guys in baseball, so they're not going to play in the All-Star game, but they play in the Olympics that year.
And to your point, if we look at the cities, at least in the United States, that are most likely going to make a run at hosting the Olympics, it's going to be L.A., Chicago,
San Francisco,
possibly New York, San Francisco, areas where, guess what, thankfully, there are usually a minimum of 2 ballparks in that city or very close by. California, you're set. You've got ballparks from top to bottom. Chicago, New York, you have 2 teams there as well. So at least that part of it's good. Man, I don't know. I just have a hard time thinking that, because the problem with when the Olympics start, what was a topic that we're also thinking about is how crazy right now the Major League Baseball season is. So what you want to do is you want to stop the season in the middle of the pennant race, go play for 3 weeks in August, come back,
10
do
days
an All-Star break, and then assume that you're still going to be playing postseason ball in October.
That's not what I want to do.
Makes no sense.
It's not what I want to do.
Then how are you postponing the All-Star break to the point of the Olympics?
You coincide the All-Star break with the expected play time during the Olympics. Those 25 or 30 guys, they don't get an All-Star break. But everybody else does. Those 25 guys, instead of playing in the All-Star game and then taking 4 or 5 days off, playing in the Home Run Derby, taking 5 or 6 days off, they go play baseball for their country.
Okay, so you're saying you still want to have an All-Star break, it just might not be the original All-Stars that you intended.
Exactly, because those guys aren't going to want to come back from the Olympics and then play in the All-Star game.
No.
You can bet.
The only thing, again,
maybe that year, that quadrennial 4th year when we have the Olympics, we have an All-Star break, but not an All-Star game.
Well, then how are we going to decide home field advantage of the World Series, Chris?
Oh, well, let 10 guys slug it out in the Home Run Derby. It's just as good as letting them decide it based on who wins the All-Star game. I mean,
but then let me ask you this: when it comes to a pennant race, so you're okay with having guys from AAA be called up to the bigs, fill in for a week, week and a half, whatever it may be, or are you wanting to say that you have the All-Star break and then there's a complete lull in play until the Olympics ends and you pick up from that point? Well, because to me, either one is kind of crappy.
What you got to do is you got to make the break coincide with the play time in the Olympics. Those guys don't go to the opening ceremonies. They don't go to the closing ceremonies. They play baseball. They get their medals. They come back to the United States and they play ball. And by doing that, it's hard on those guys that are going to play in the Olympics. But the rest of the league gets their regular break, and everybody comes back. No minor leaguers are called up during the pennant race. Just all you do is you play, instead of playing 80 games before the All-Star break and then having the All-Star break, you play 120 games before the All-Star break, have the break, 25 guys go play the Olympics. Everybody else takes their break. When they come back, we continue the pennant race from there, play the next 40 some odd games.
It might work. I kind of thought like it's that cartoon where that's crazy, but it's just so crazy it just might work. But man, as long as that season is, I have a hard time.
Or what are you going to do?
I have a hard time thinking that you stop the baseball season mid-season.
Okay, so I got a question for you. What if we did this instead? Instead of sending professional baseball players to the Olympics every 4 years and allowing our Major League Baseball players best to represent the country, how about we let 30 guys who really, really want to play baseball
Chris,
go
you're not
play?
Going to Tokyo.
And I don't want to go to Tokyo. I mean, I do want to go to Tokyo, but I want to go to Tokyo to eat, not to play baseball.
I got a better idea.
No,
why don't we just
you put the top 25 or 30 players in AAA ball around the country, and you let those guys represent the United States.
Or we just say the Little League World Series is going to be part of the Olympics that year, and we let 12-year-old kids from around the earth figure out who the best country in the world is.
You mean like gymnastics?
Yeah. only they're going to wear baseball clothes and not leotards.
I think that having minor league guys play would be a better option, because you can stop the minor league season for 3 weeks and nobody is really going to care. I'm sorry, well, JW. JW is going to care.
Guys, if you care about minor league baseball and you want to rip Chris, or if you're like me and you just want to rip him because it's easy, tweet us at OOLeftField. You can like us on Facebook, Out of Left Field, and you can email us, ooleftfield@gmail.com. If you want to know which one's Chris in the pictures, to be fair, he has a better hairline. I don't, although I'm wearing a hat, so, hey, I'm covered there. But still.
I'm also the better looking one. I'm also the better looking one in uniform.
Yeah, that picture's 10 years old there, Hotshot. So before we get into the whole false advertising of our pages there.
Picture's 6 years old, sir.
Yeah, 6, 10, close enough for government work.
We know all about that.
So, Battle, here's what I'm thinking. We are right near the hour mark, and I don't want to push this too far because really, as crazy right now as the second half is going, I'm kind of interested to see, now that the trades are starting, everything kind of winding down, guys are starting to kind of find their groove, they have to get comfortable in a new home, and the waiver deadline still is yet to pass. I'd like to come back next week and let's just see what the hell has happened. So I'm going to give a quick rundown before we head out, and then we can kind of roll from there if you're good with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
So start the American League. Here's something for you. The Toronto Blue Jays and Texas Rangers had the same flipping record right now. They're 63-47. Blue Jays a half game up on the Orioles. Orioles 4-6 in their last 10. Toronto streaking at 7-3, but right now, nobody hotter in the American League than the Detroit Tigers, who were 9-1 in their last 10.
And we'll be 10-0. And we'll be 10-0 when that gets up in the morning.
Yeah, they have closed the gap. They are 2 back of Cleveland, which, assuming they win tonight, which you said, and Cleveland got smacked by the New York Yankees, it will be a 1-game separation. And then it's a runaway. The White Sox, 9.5 back. Back to the East, so for the record, Boston, 2.5 out of first place. They lead the wild card right now. The AL East is going to be absolutely nuts. I was glad to see Houston. Houston they've been on a big slide of 3-7 in their last 10, tied with the Royals for the worst last 10 game streak. Royals got smacked by the Rays after throwing 7 innings of no hit ball on Monday, which I was there. Just a really disappointing turn of events for them. So they're trying to get back in it. They're playing Texas this weekend in a weekend series. They won tonight. So 5.5 back of Texas for the division lead. 3 games out of the wild card. Dallas Keuchel pitched himself a nice game. Really needed to see them turn around. They are 5 games below 500 on the road. That's where you need to see a big improvement. I still think they can do it, but it's going to be tough. We move to the National League. Go ahead, B.
Well, I mean, let's look at teams like Detroit, who, like you said, is on just a rip right now. You said the Orioles are sneaking in, trying to make up ground on both the Blue Jays and the Rangers.
Well,
and
the
let's
Orioles
not forget,
were leading the division coming into this week, and the Jays have been on that tear. Now they've taken a half-game lead over the O's.
Right. So, but I don't think either of us really gave the Orioles or the Blue Jays a chance at this division after the trade that went down. What happened at the end of the trade deadline with Texas getting Lucroy and Beltran and Jeffress, who came out and had a pretty decent outing in his first outing with Texas. But Texas lost 2 of 3 to the Orioles in their most recent series, which just ended yesterday. They did finally manage to take a game at the end of that series and then go and play the Astros and just get annihilated.
Yeah, and granted, Camden Yards is a hitter's park, and Cole Hamels is a fly ball pitcher, which hurts him. So it's no big deal in Arlington. Arlington's more of a pitcher-friendly park, but he got rocked in Camden. I'm surprised. I think the AL East is the craziest because the team that made the most moves is the Orioles, and the Blue Jays, and right now the Birdies are sitting on top. The Blue Birdies are sitting on top at least.
Yeah.
Moving in the NL, I think at this point we are probably by next show going to be able to go ahead and call the NL East a wrap. It's probably right now that and the Central are probably the 2 easiest to call. The Nats are 7.5 up on the Marlins. Marlins still only a half game out of the wild card. They've lost their last 3. They're 4-6 out of their last 10. They're above 500 in both home and on the road. They're streaky, and right now that their streak is in the downward trend. The only team on a winning streak of more than 2 is that actually every team has lost at least one. The Nats have won 4 in a row. We move to the Central. It's the Cubbies. I mean, plain and simple, it's the Cubbies.
Yeah.
They're
9 games up.
41. Yeah, 9 games up. St. Louis, though, in that wild card right now. So really, really surprised. Matt Carpenter has come back for the Cardinals. There's a possibility that they go on a late season tear. Like we've said, the Cardinals are the San Antonio Spurs of Major League Baseball. I'm not counting them out. The Pirates are done. They're 12 games out. They're 3 games out of the wild card. I don't see them making a late push. I just don't. It's just not their year. Unfortunately, B, I'll give you the floor for the NL West because, bro, what the hell is going on with your Giants, man? They're 4-6. The last 10 been on a huge slide. Samardzija is pitching tonight.
Pitched tonight and got rocked. It's not good. It hasn't been good, and it's not just 4-6. 4-6 makes it seem a whole lot better than it is. They are 5-14 since the break.
Ooh.
It's not a slide. It is a plummet.
They are in free fall.
The Dodgers are a game and a half back. I'm trying to look at the score right now. That game hasn't ended. But if the Dodgers win tonight, they will be half a game back. We're talking about a team. Well, the Dodgers aren't going to win tonight. It's 8-0 Boston right now in the top of the 8th. But had the Dodgers won tonight, they would have been half a game back. Still, they're only a game and a half back in the NL West. Now, the Padres, the Rockies, and the Diamondbacks are out. I don't think that we ever really expected them to be in, but this looks like it might be a tight race going into mid-August and into early September, unless the Giants can somehow pull out of this nosedive they've been in for the last 19 games. Even the games that they've won have not been strong wins. These have been a couple of walk-off home runs, some late inning sort of heroics, but we've seen them go and lose games in the 10th and 11th and 12th inning that it looked like they were going to win in the 6th and 7th inning.
And real quick, the Orioles win tonight, so we now have a virtual tie for first place in the American League East. Half game separating, but basically, sitting neck and neck. So the Orioles and the Blue Jays sitting on top of the East, and the Red Sox are going to keep that. So now,
by virtue of the fact that the Orioles have played one game fewer.
Correct.
They're 62-46. Jays are 63-47.
Correct. And right now we have a deadlock for the second wild card slot. The Marlins and the Cardinals both 58-51. Surprisingly, the Dodgers 60-48. They're 6-4 in their last 10. They're 2.5 games up for the first slot. But like you said, they are 2 games away from making a run at taking that first place spot back in the West. I know we've talked about before that the Giants usually can get a late season slide, but they're starting a little bit earlier, and they're pulling out of it a whole hell of a lot less.
Yeah, and usually this sort of slide happens with the Giants in September, and it's rough on them in September. And obviously what everybody's hoping is that they're going to pull out of this slide, and September is going to be a good month. Because if September's a good month like it typically is for LA, then LA might take that division, and all of a sudden the Giants, who have been on the top of that division for months, are going to slide into that wild card slot, and that's going to really be rough.
I agree. It's going to be the American League is the most up for grabs. There's so much more to go with. You're right over there.
Yeah, I'm all right.
We're going to see what happens in the West, man. I know that you're obviously keeping the closest eye on that, but I'm excited. So, man, give us a video of that speed climbing, and man, let's have another crazy week in baseball, because I have just this strange feeling in the pit of my stomach that over the course of the next week, we're going to see some things in Major League Baseball that we're going to swear are just straight out of left field. Guys, thanks for joining us. We will see you back next week for show number 12. This has been Out of Left Field. We will see you guys next week at OO Left Field on Twitter, Out of Left Field on Facebook. Email us, ooleftfield@gmail.com.